Hi everybody, my name is Adam Richter. I am the current continuing care coordinator for Columbia's Human Rights Initiative and Asylum Clinic. The point of this video is just to give you a brief intro to what the continuing care branch of the Asylum Clinic does, how the Asylum Clinic works generally, and how we kind of fit into the whole process and why this is such an important part of the clinic. So thanks for your patience in listening to this video. I know that with everybody being in school, that we probably have tons of videos to listen to all the time. But I think this will be very helpful and hopefully an easy way to digest some of the information. So I'm just using Photo Booth here. You can see a lot of embarrassing pictures of me down here. Yeah, I'm just going to give you a run through and use this kind of small little diagram to explain what we have going on here. So without any delay, here we are. So for some of the other videos, I'm going to actually be referring to documents that we're going to be using in the continuing care process. But for this intro one, I just have this very, very basic document here that will kind of guide us through how we think about the continuing care branch of the Asylum Clinic. So check this out. So the organization that we work for is the Columbia University's College of Physicians and Surgeons Human Rights Initiative. That currently has three parts. So the Human Rights Initiative was one of the first parts. They do things more related to advocacy. They do a lot more campaigns. What else do they do? They do a lot more student organizing around different issues that are related to refugee and asylee health, and also just refugee and asylee issues more broadly. So they do more of like publicity work, and they have the actual more tangible part of what we do is called the Asylum Clinic. So the Asylum Clinic doesn't quite do the advocacy and everything, but they do the actual medical affidavits. So what is a medical affidavit? A brief explanation of what a medical affidavit is that when a refugee or an asylum seeker is putting forth their application to the United States government to kind of convince them that they deserve or should be granted asylum in the United States, a medical affidavit kind of is just a physician testimony backing up what the person is saying. So the medical affidavit is usually either classified as a physical affidavit, as in a physical health affidavit, or a mental health affidavit, or a psychiatric affidavit, they call it. So if you have we'll call it a physical health affidavit, then this is going to be looking for signs of injury or torture or any kind of physical harm that that person might have suffered wherever they were coming from in their home country or wherever they are trying to migrate from. A medical affidavit is basically a doctor saying, hey, I am a medical doctor, board certified, and blah, 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 and I have observed this person, and I can testify to the fact that these signs and these different symptoms that they're having on their body are a result of some kind of injury, and it does indeed match their story on their medical affidavit. So that's one kind of affidavit that we do. We also do what you might call a psychiatric affidavit. And this one, I would say maybe is a little bit more common, but this one just deals with any mental health issues that have arisen from their experiences in their home country and why they're fleeing. So this a lot of times can be things like PTSD or panic attacks. It can be a lot of other different things that they're suffering. So these are done by psychiatrists, and so it's kind of a similar thing. So they're basically they meet with these different clients and they listen to their story. They give them a brief observation, and then they write a document called an affidavit that verifies that the story that they're telling is indeed true. And then the doctor kind of adds not quite what we'd call diagnoses, but kind of gives a detailed description of all the different findings that they had that would lead them to make a diagnosis. And I'll tell you why. I'm trying to kind of dance around those words there here in 1 second. So why is this so important? I forget the exact stats, but if you are an asylum seeker and you have no affidavit, so as ridiculous as this is, if you have no affidavit, if you don't have a doctor kind of backing up your story or having done like a really detailed professional interview with you, then your chances of getting asylum in the United States is about 30%. Obviously, that changes with a ton of variables, and actually with this administration, it kind of changes month by month, unfortunately. But if you do have a medical affidavit, so again, you have a doctor check you out, you meet with them and you get all this information, you get a signed legal document from this doctor, then your chances of getting granted asylum jump up to about 90%. Why that is exactly, we're not entirely sure, but we do know that this is a very valuable thing that we can provide to asylum seekers and refugees, and so that's why it's so important that we're able to do this for the human rights initiatives and the asylum clinic. So this whole process here, as far as the medical affidavit, is organized by the client's lawyer, and then the client's lawyer contacts an organization called Physicians for Human Rights, which I think I have their board up here. So this is their website. A really cool website, by the way, if you're just interested in checking it out. So Physicians for Human Rights is kind of our parent organization that gives us all of these cases, and they're the ones that kind of orchestrate which cases we get and where the people are coming from, and they're kind of the liaison a lot of times between the lawyers and our clinic. So at Columbia's Asylum Clinic, we are responsible for providing, kind of coordinating the different actors to come together. So here we have different medical students, and they are often working with lawyers, and then we have doctors that come from Columbia, like the Columbia Health Network. We also have doctors coming from other places as well, but they're the ones providing and meeting with the asylum seekers and refugees. Okay, so this process, very awesome that we're able to do this, but as helpful as this can be in allowing somebody to be granted asylum or granting somebody refugee status or doing whatever it is we can to help them in the legal process, we found that it's often, a lot of times people, once they leave the office of the doctor, they don't really have a whole lot of support as far as fitting in the United States, or as you probably know, a lot of asylum seekers and refugees have a lot of needs that need to get met that we aren't able to meet. One thing that I want to draw your attention to is the reason why I was kind of dancing around the term of a diagnosis is because this medical affidavit is not any sort of medical appointment. So the big distinction there is that the doctors that meet with the clients here cannot provide any kind of medical care. Why that's so important is because of legal stipulations and any potential conflict of interest. So as you can imagine, being granted asylum nowadays is pretty difficult, and different lawyers will try to look at anything to kind of show that a person might not be telling the truth, or that maybe that different people that they've worked with might be incentivized to help this person out, and one of those can come in the form of medical care. So the reason why we call people, you'll hear me say clients, and we don't say patients, is because the doctors through Columbia can't provide any kind of medical care for those asylum seekers. The reason that is because someone can make the argument that the reason that they're doing these affidavits is so they'll get additional patients, and therefore that would be more money for the doctors. And so there has to be a huge distinction between the doctors providing a medical affidavit, as in just we say like an observation, not like a physical exam or anything like that. It's just an observation, and they're not going to be treating them, because if they were to treat them, then they would become their patient, and that has different financial conflicts of interest potentially. So anyway, that's why we try to keep this completely separate from continuing care. That's also relevant because that is why continuing care is so important. Despite the fact that we are a medical school, we do not have any good connections to the Psychiatric Institute or all the different medical staff that we have available to us as instructors. One, because we simply don't as a student-run clinic, but two, if we did, it could be seen again as a potential conflict of interest, and so that's why as continuing care, one of our main responsibilities is finding alternative sources for these people to go to get different needs met, including mental and physical health care. So continuing care, you'll notice that we are somewhat of a separate branch, but we are most related to the asylum clinic. So what happens is, again, like I said, after people have their affidavit processed, they a lot of times have other needs that can be, a wide variety of things. That could be, legal assistance, housing assistance, could be mental health, physical health, could be trying to feel safe inside their home, maybe safe outside their home, all sorts of needs that they might have trying to fit in to life here in the United States while they're either having their application, documented and processed, or they might have their asylum status already granted, and they're just trying to adjust. So that's where we come in, the continuing care branch. So we basically have me, so I am the continuing care coordinator. So the continuing care coordinator, I am kind of the connection between the team that works over here and then the team that works over here. So I guess I could put myself right here. But the continuing care coordinator, I also work with continuing care volunteers, and that's you guys. So that tends to be social work students, public health students, and then we also have other volunteers as well. Anybody who's really passionate and maybe has some experience working with refugees or asylum seekers, we are very open to those people as well. You'll notice there's no medical students over here. one, we know that public health students and social work students have a certain skill set and connections, as well as just different networks. They're going to be way more helpful than a lot of the networks and skills that medical students have. So we've also, we just think it's information, or we think it's important to try to branch out and to try and kind of have a big network across Columbia University. But we really, really value all the expertise that social work students and public health students, as well as people coming from outside the medical school, bring to this particular task of trying to find the best resources for these refugees and asylum seekers. So what is continuing care? Continuing care, again, like I said, so we aim to meet the remaining needs of our clients, which is a pretty bold statement, to be honest. So again, that means that we try to hook them up with opportunities for, can be mental health care, can be physical health care, can be housing, can be legal assistance, can be food, can be anything really, okay? So what our job is to do is we are to try to meet the client where they're at, see how they're doing, what their needs are, and then we try to hook them up with different resources. And so that is all. So this is kind of a brief overview of how the continuing care team fits into the broader scope of the Asylum Clinic and the Human Rights Initiative at Columbia University. Okay, and the last thing, just to prove that you have watched this video, which I know is kind of ridiculous, but to prove that you have watched this video or listened to this video, your password for this video is pumpernickel. Okay, so your password is pumpernickel. Thanks.